Good Monday evening, everybody. We're sitting here by the fire, Al.
It's been a whirlwind of a week.
Yeah.
But we made it through.
Absolutely.
Actually, I will say that I will say that this was one of the easier moves I've ever had. And I think maybe it's because we put stuff into storage, but we did it wasn't as tough as I thought it was going to be. What do you think?
I think you did a lot of work in advance to organize everything, so it made moving day easier.
Yeah. Well, we made it.
We did make it. We made it. We're here in Vermont for a little bit. You can see we started a little fire behind us.
Your brother just asked if
Big
we
fire.
started it.
I did. We didn't start the fire, but I did.
Heather says
the fire's real. This is a real fire.
Heather says that she loves the setting.
We're trying to go with a nice little, like a nice winter feel. Somebody says this is better than the shelf. I agree. The shelf is safer, but this puts off a nice heat.
You might get a little hot.
I might get a little hot.
If you get too hot, let me know. I'll close what is it?
So we're in Vermont for a little bit. There hasn't been much snow, so no skiing as of yet. But we'll try our best.
Kate
we'll
said
check it out.
We didn't have to unpack. No, Kate, we did not unpack because we had to put our stuff into storage because our new apartment isn't ready yet.
Yeah.
So we put stuff into storage. So Mosh and I, for the next 2-ish months, will be nomads. And so here, someone asked if we were in Stowe. No, we're in Stratton, Vermont.
Stratton.
But actually, next week we will be in Miami.
Yeah, we're gonna go to warm weather for a little bit. So we'll come back to the cold weather.
This fire is
short-lived.
Flip.
So the Monday night tour begins this Monday from Vermont, and then God willing, next Monday from Florida. So you guys might notice on the bottom of the screen, we are fundraising tonight for the American Red Cross, which is heavily involved in the relief effort, disaster relief effort. There's a lot of organizations who are doing great, important work across the South and the Midwest in the affected areas by the tornadoes. So 100% of the donations, if you donate at the bottom of the screen during this live, will go to the Red Cross. One of the things that the Red Cross has said to folks is they have a blood shortage. So if you are able and healthy to donate blood, please go ahead and do that as they treat the dozens, hundreds and hundreds of folks who were injured. Unfortunately, there's still many, many missing, at least 70 dead. And so if we can do a little bit tonight to help that effort, then that's important work.
Absolutely tragic.
Yeah.
It's not like a hurricane where you have at least 24 hours, whatever, to get out. I mean, this is just...
Sometimes you have 3 minutes notice. In the case, unfortunately, we're hearing about the candle factory in Kentucky where they had gotten the tornado warning. Some had asked to leave work. They were running on a 24-hour shift because of the demand right now for candles for Christmas. And the employer said, you might lose your job if you go home. And so, unfortunately, those stories are not coming out about that factory where people stayed at work because they thought they were going to lose their job and they end up losing their lives.
And also, another thing is Amazon. Apparently, you're not allowed to bring your phone if you're an Amazon worker.
Yeah.
And typically, you get on your phone, you get weather updates, and the people who are working at the Amazon facility.
The Amazon warehouse in Illinois.
Correct. Didn't have their phones on them, so maybe that'll change.
I hope so.
I would, if you can, just move your phone down because you can't see your face with all the comments.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, there we go. Sorry, new setup, guys. Thanks for rolling. And Kelsey says lawsuits are coming. Indeed. So what we know right now, and they're still doing assessment right now of how strong these tornadoes were, but one tornado we believe might have broken a record, the Quad State tornado, that went from Arkansas to Missouri to Tennessee to Kentucky, from Arkansas through Mayfield, Kentucky, many of the hardest hit towns. They believe that tornado went more than 200 miles, was throwing debris up in the air up to 30,000 feet. That's the elevation, folks, that commercial jets fly at. Somebody was describing flying through the region on, what was that, Saturday night? Friday to Saturday, and saying that it was the bumpiest, scariest ride they'd ever taken. And the fact that the tornado was bringing up debris 30,000 feet, you could have seen stuff flying past you. So the Weather Service is still doing an assessment of how strong that was. What they call it is the Enhanced Fujita Scale. So you have an EF1, EF2, EF3, EF4, EF5 being the most powerful of tornadoes. And based on the damage they're seeing, just the complete pummeling of the situation on there, they're thinking of anywhere between EF3 and EF5. The issue with tornadoes, guys, I grew up in the Midwest. We did tornado drills growing up. Is you hear a siren. This is pre-cell phone. Now you have cell phone alerts. But even with the cell phone alerts, you might get several minutes notice to you typically go to the interior room of the home. If you have a bathtub, you go in the bathtub. If you can bring a mattress on top of you or something heavy on top of you, you do that. And then just hope and pray for the best, unless you have a basement or some sort of storm shelter, of course. But in many cases, you tend to see, unfortunately, the worst damage in kind of trailer parks and that sort of area where there's no basement situation.
Just horrendous.
Yeah.
Horrendous. And you said also that with global warming and climate change and stuff, this is going to happen, you think, more?
Well, they're determining right now what impact, if any, the climate change has on the power of tornadoes. What they do know is that the changing climate has moved Tornado Alley. So we all grew up knowing Tornado Alley is like Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, where the majority of the tornadoes happen. Over the course of the past 15 years, and those of you who are in the South know this, tornadoes more and more have started to shift. That zone, that alley, effectively has shifted towards the southeast. So you're seeing many more tornadoes now in Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, just based on that. So that there appears to be evidence for. I'm cautious before you just start laying blame on anything, but that's certainly something to something that scientists so far have been able to identify as the shifting zone of where the tornadoes are happening.
So are you done with this subject? I just want to mention.
Yeah. So just a reminder. we've already raised more than $400 for the American Red Cross, and we're only less than 10 minutes in. Thank you guys. You guys are extremely, extremely generous. Let's see how we can do by the end of the night tonight.
Wow.
13 donations, $405.
What's our goal?
I mean, at this pace, $1 million. No. No. I mean, if we got that in the first 8 minutes, I don't know. Can we hit $2,500 tonight, guys? I don't know. Let's see. If we can hit 2,000, 2,500, I think that'd be incredible. If we can do more, great. Okay, so...
I just want to mention one thing.
Yeah.
You can watch, by the way, if you're watching on your phone, you can watch IG Live from a computer and then stream it to your television. Just letting you know.
Yes, in fact, we posted, one of you last week posted doing it off of your, I think it was a Chromebook or Amazon Fire, to their television sets, and they were watching it in front of Christy. It was a crazy sight to see myself on a 60-inch TV.
But it just makes it's a lot easier to watch it on your computer with the comments and stuff also. Yeah,
that's one of Al's tricks is she watches on the laptop and then is able to go through your comments.
I copy paste the comments.
So we're raising money for the American Red Cross tonight. We're continuing to monitor the situation with tornadoes. We have a couple other topics which kind of dominated your questions tonight, and we'll just preview them quickly. We're going to hit Omicron, the latest there, what we know, what we still don't know, related to all things vaccines and some of the numbers we've seen there. Remember when the Golden Globes were a thing? The nominations were announced today, but you almost didn't hear about it, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a bit about Michigan and what's going on. The school shooter appeared in court today. His parents appear in court tomorrow, and the kind of crazy situation as related to the parents and their son having nothing to do with each other at this point. The parents won't even pay for a lawyer for him. We'll get into that. We're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine, Russia. I got a couple questions related to that. The Maxwell Trial, which will start again on Thursday after a few-day break, will also happen. And then we'll get to Chris Wallace, my old boss, and his departure from Fox News and what that means. And then Alex's favorite subject of the day.
Well, I think it's kind of already played out, but
the
we'll
Peloton
address
story.
We'll address it briefly. Sex and the City, Peloton. We also saw the new I Love Lucy. It's called Being the Ricardos movie, which we loved. We did. It was our first time back to the movie theater yesterday, and we saw the Nicole Kidman as Lucille Ball, which was pretty incredible.
Pretty impressive to see.
Very good. We also want to see West Side Story, which we heard is very, very good.
And I will talk about Succession.
And you will talk about Succession.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was an awesome finale. I have to say that show, really something. You want to start Omicron?
I think so, yeah. start? Start with
All right. So let's talk as we hit the $600 mark for the Red Cross tonight, which good work, everybody. Let's keep going.
The snow cat just is behind you. If you saw the
they're whatever snow exists in Vermont right now after the rain over the weekend. They're trying to groom right now. So Omicron. This is what we know, and we'll begin with this headline because that just broke in the last couple hours. Is that Britain appears to have confirmed the first death from the Omicron variant. Remember, we have seen signs so far the new variant causes less severe symptoms, but gets to more people. And the fear is getting to more people, ultimately you're going to see, potentially as many deaths just because it's going through more people. Though so far, based on hospitalization numbers in Europe, South Africa, and the US, you have seen less severe symptoms. Unfortunately, some sad news out of the UK today, and that has led Boris Johnson to really push the idea of boosters. And I'll hit a couple more numbers before we get to that further. Right now we know Omicron, they've been able to confirm it in 30 states in the US. I mean, it's pretty much everywhere at this point. They have to do this genomic sampling, genomic testing, DNA testing on samples of COVID in order to determine whether it's Delta variant, whether it's OG variant, whether it's Omicron variant. Delta's still dominating, but they're seeing the numbers increase at a very fast pace. One of the big questions when it comes to Omicron is, can it coexist with Delta or will it eventually take out Delta? There's a study that came out today out of the University of Washington, up in Washington State, that found that 13% of the 217 specimens they looked at had Omicron mutation. That was up from 7% the day before and 3% the day before that. So they're just seeing, as they take a sample of like 210-ish, 217-ish positive samples, that each day they're seeing more and more of the Omicron variant kind of dominate the sample. So that does show you, how quickly it's spreading, that the variant is spreading, though it still appears, while we did see that death in the UK, that it appears most of the folks who are suffering from it, at least so far, have seen less severe symptoms, especially those, we've seen several doctors now speak out from South Africa who are like, yeah, the symptoms seem less severe, especially among the vaccinated.
Or we saw an article today that said 1 out of every 100 Americans over 65 has died from COVID.
Yeah, so one of the other numbers that came out, we'll talk a bit more about how the vaccines are doing here, is that we've had about 800,000 deaths from COVID over the course of the last year and a half. 600,000, 75% of 800,000 are Americans over the age of 65. 50% of the deaths, 400,000, have been over the age of 75. So just giving you a sense of the numbers, 54 million confirmed cases in the country, 800,000 deaths, 400,000, half of those have been over the age of 75. When you bring the number down to 65, that is 3/4 of the deaths have been over the age of 65. Then about 200,000 Americans have died of COVID under the age of 65. When you work those numbers, that means that 1 out of every 100 Americans over the age of 65 has died from the coronavirus. Under the age of 65, it's 1 out of every 1,400 Americans has died of the virus. So those numbers were pretty stunning to see today. One thing we're seeing is we're waiting for the various studies to come out as related to the vaccine. We have seen most of the studies are all related to Pfizer, left and right, from Pfizer, from the Israelis who mainly used Pfizer in their country, from South Africa, which has Oxford and Pfizer. And so you saw a bit of the Oxford AstraZeneca, which appeared weaker initially than Pfizer. So far, 2 Pfizer vaccines have a 30 to 40% efficacy against Omicron. Remember, originally against the original virus had 92 to 95%. Then against Delta it was around 70%. It's 30 to 40% efficacy against Omicron as far as 2 shots of Pfizer are concerned. When you do the booster, you bring it back up to 80%, which is why you see a lot of the push towards the booster right now. The other good news is that both if you have natural immunity, prior immunity from COVID, or you got 2 vaccines, our T-cell response is working. So that prevents the most severe illness in the lungs. The important thing, though, is if you're looking for extra power, especially if you're over the age of 65 or you suffer from other conditions, the booster seems to really help here. There is some question right now as related to the data coming out of South Africa. We thought we had reached the peak of Omicron. It turns out the South African National Institute of Communicable Diseases left out half the tests. So they reported 19,000 additional tests on top of the 18,000 they got before. So basically the number was double what they reported. So it does appear that the number continues to go up, but though less of a pace than it was before. But we haven't peaked because the numbers were delayed. They called it an IT issue. What do we got?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Magic Mike says, do we know yet of anyone who had either the OG or last variant, Delta, I'm assuming he means, that have now gotten this new one?
Yeah, there is a lot of evidence of that, Mike, that because of how different Omicron is, its reinfection is much, much higher, and that your body doesn't necessarily recognize it initially and completely pushes it off because of how foreign it is. It looks almost like a different type of virus. So that is the case. Again, less symptoms, it appears, and it appears that if you've gotten the vaccine or have some prior immunity, that you do have some more T-cell fighting power. But it does appear, I know some people were like, well, why should we listen to Pfizer when Pfizer says we should have the Pfizer booster? It's good for Pfizer. I said, okay, we'll wait for some third-party studies. You've now seen studies out of the UK, Israel, and South Africa, all unrelated to Pfizer, as not working for Pfizer, who all say booster helps. Got a couple.
Kate just asked, is it an IT issue or an incompetence issue?
Good question. I don't know how the NICD of South Africa works, but it's always easy to blame things on the following things: an intern or IT. And so they went with IT to see if that's true. By the way, in South Africa, it came out that the president of South Africa has tested positive for COVID. Unclear if he has Omicron, but Ramaphosa says he's suffering from mild symptoms. He's isolating in Cape Town, and he has delegated his responsibilities to his deputy president. And so that's pretty notable that even the leader of the country got it, and they try to keep him as secure as possible. Go ahead, Al.
Aaron asks, is original COVID variant still circulating or completely overpowered by later variants?
Delta is basically, up until a month ago, Delta is like 100% of the cases, like 90, something percent. Yeah, I mean, the way these variants work is, and people are asking, like, well, what happened to variants after Delta, between Delta and Omicron? And ultimately, Delta just overpowered. Delta just happened to be a variant that was stronger than the other variants, even the subsequent variants. And so that's where we're at. Now you are seeing for the first time Delta kind of lose its position as the dominant variant because of how quickly Omicron spreads. Again, think about evolution, right? In evolution, whether it's animals, humans, viruses, you're trying to survive and spread and become the dominant species or the dominant variant. And so, ultimately, as the virus goes through its various mutations, one mutation takes off and its goal is to spread. So what that means is, as a virus, you typically become less deadly to spread further, because remember, if you're a virus and you kill more people, it's going to spread to less people because you're killing people, if that makes sense. And so anyway, that's why there's this feeling of a natural progression that Omicron is going to be less deadly than Delta because it'll get to more people that way. Whereas Ebola, we're all scared to death of Ebola, but Ebola kills people very quickly. So it's like Ebola has to spread very, very quickly because as it's knocking people down, that those people can't spread Ebola. So Ebola isn't necessarily positioned for unless somebody had a strategy to spread Ebola, it's going to be very difficult for Ebola to naturally spread globally and take over like that. Go ahead.
Laura asked, any statistics on pediatric cases with Omicron?
There's anecdotal data out of South Africa right now. So far, all we've heard from South African doctors is that most of the kids seem to be having very mild symptoms with it. There were those initial hospital numbers, and it's always difficult, guys, because ultimately you're reporting out numbers from a country and there's different kind of sensibility. There was that freak out 2 weeks ago about COVID, which meant that if your kid was exhibiting any remote symptoms, you were taking the kid to the hospital. But then most of the kids being treated there were being sent home within a day or just being held protectively. And so thankfully we haven't seen anything in terms of a massive surge in particularly kids in the ICU. And I think that would be the thing to look out for.
So we still have more questions about this, but Magic, Mike, and Turkey.
I'm going to turn around with some. I'll make sure the fire's up.
Well, they're really concerned about they're not really concerned, but they would like for you to stoke the fire.
Oh, should we take a stoke the fire break?
I'll ask a question while you do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kate asks, how do you feel about the new mask? About the new mask vaccine mandates for restaurants and events put in place now, almost 2 years later.
Well, how do I feel about the mask mandates? What's interesting about that is, like, I noted today the you'll have to excuse me as we get the fire going here. Let's see.
Look at it. It's much better now.
I stuck a little artificial thing in there.
Perfect.
I do need. The problem is if you guys, any experts out there know about fire building, is you need like some smaller logs to help feed the larger logs. What's left in there is a couple of thicker logs, and getting the fire there to really kind of, you know what, we're doing okay there. Keep me honest.
It looks great.
How do I feel?
You want me to ask the question again?
It was about mask mandates.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So
there we go, the turkey room stuff.
I do think that what was interesting is the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, said, like, listen, we've reached, like, we have good medications now. The majority of folks are vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, it's your own damn fault. I don't know that a mandatory mask situation is necessary in my state. It's up to you. If you think that, you know, you should do it, if you own a store and you want people to wear them, it's up to you. But I'm not going to mandate it on the state at this point. Like, we're beyond that. And it was interesting to hear that from a Democrat, because you saw at the same time California today reinstitute its indoor mask ban or mask mandate. You have seen, by the way, and we've talked about this on multiple lives, that mask mandates or masks, the only ones that really work, guys, are the N95s or the KN95s. There's medical level masks. The rest of our masks, like, sure, are helpful in some way, shape, or form, but it's already pretty evident that the OG virus spread through that, and now that we have this Omicron variant, like, that's, you know, swimming through surgical masks, I'm sure, pretty easily. So, you know, either go back to the double mask or go to the N95 if you're really looking to have an effective mask situation, if you see it's necessary. What else we got, Al?
I think that you really answered a lot of questions.
You hit everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Catherine Shore says, Illinois here, and we've had the mask mandate for like 20 years at this point.
That's true.
Yeah, 20. You know what, Al? You know what? It's been 20 years since I lived in Illinois.
Oh, wow. But you still have an Illinois driver's license.
I still have an Illinois driver's license. Land of Lincoln, baby. The Cardinal State. I went to D.C. for almost 10 years, and I've been in New York for almost 12 years, and I still keep renewing my Illinois driver's license.
Why?
It's an identity thing.
Do you want to go back there? Do you want to move back there?
Move back to Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Sure.
So
should we take this tour? No, I don't think I keep a driver's license because I want to move back to Chicago. I keep a driver's license because, like, you know, it's near and dear to my heart. And, like, logistically, going to another DMV is not an attractive proposition. But I do feel like I need to get a New York driver's license, don't you think? I have a New York marriage license that I share with you.
Yeah, but I think it's time
That's
to
a
get
license.
a driver's license. I mean, honestly, truth is, do whatever you want. I don't care. I don't think we will ever... Okay, Erin Beth says, I don't think we will ever go back to not wearing masks in healthcare.
Yeah, I do think... I mean, I'll get notes once in a while from folks who live particularly in kind of East Asia, from Korea, from Taiwan, etc., and you'll send me DM like, I don't understand you Americans with the mask issue. Like, we do it here. Everyone's civil to each other. It's helpful. It brings down flu numbers every season. Why are you guys so crazy about the masks in America?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me, especially in the winter. It helps keep me warm. What was I going to say? Someone said, I totally blanked out.
All good.
I was going to say something.
We're here for a while.
I'm actually not feeling 100% right now, which is
no, you're a little under the weather.
So
we gave you a COVID test today. You don't have COVID.
Mosh was nursing me back to health all day.
I was trying my best. We were bringing our tea.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the next topic as we reach. By the way, checking for those of you who joined in progress.
Oh, this is what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Tell everybody what the fundraiser is for.
I was just going to do that. I was just going to do that.
Perfect.
As we move on to the next topic, I want to just remind folks at the bottom of the screen, American Red Cross. We're fundraising for them as they deal with disaster relief, tornado relief down in the South and the Midwest related to this weekend's disaster. So if you can donate to the American Red Cross, I know that we would be grateful. They would be grateful as they look to help folks begin to rebuild their lives. And it's no worse time not to have a home than as you head into the holiday season. So hoping any dollar that you can donate to that would be extremely, extremely helpful. And so our goal tonight, what are we at? $620 for the American Red Cross. So hopefully, we're looking to, we did really well in the beginning, hoping to hit 2,000. All right, next topic that came up from a few folks today was Crumley, Michigan. I will get to the Succession finale in a second. So the Michigan school shooter made his first court appearance today. Interestingly, he has a court-appointed attorney. His parents are not paying for an attorney for him, though they have brought in their own attorney, a attorney that actually represented, of all people, Larry Nassar, the coach who abused and molested the American gymnast, of which there was a settlement today for nearly $400 million. So the attorney that represented Nassar now represents the Crumley parents. They're in court tomorrow. It's a completely separate case. They have decided, for whatever reason, not to hire an attorney for their son. There's a separation between the two cases. There's a court-appointed attorney who's representing the son. He appeared in court today along with his lawyers. Well, there's a couple things we can get into in a second. But one thing I wanted to say was the defense attorney said Crumley doesn't belong in jail. He's being deprived of school while he's in jail. And the judge is like, are you kidding me? The guy shot up his school. And they're like, well, he's being deprived of education. He should get education. He shouldn't be in this jail with a bunch of adults. Because remember, he was 15 years old, but he's being tried as an adult for committing multiple acts of murder and terrorism in his school. As far as the lawyer is concerned, there's a couple theories about it, Al, and I want to talk tomorrow to Ricky Kidman about it. And if you guys don't know this, there's a 3 p.m. Patreon Zoom that we're doing tomorrow with Ricky Kidman, a friend, former colleague of mine. She's a longtime criminal defense attorney going back many decades, former court TV anchor, analyst. She's covered every major trial that you can name in the past 30 years. And so we'll be talking to her on Zoom at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. For those of you who are on Patreon, we'll see you there. Send your questions in advance or send them in live. Also, if you're not subscribing to Patreon, please go to the link in my bio and subscribe. And we have that. And by the way, should I tease what's coming up in January, Elle?
Yes.
We're going to be talking to the one and only Barbara Corcoran in January on real estate, entrepreneurship, Shark Tank, a whole bunch of stuff.
She's awesome.
So we got Ricky on Maxwell, Michigan, a whole bunch of legal stuff tomorrow. We got Barbara Corcoran in January. So we got some good stuff coming up for you Patreon supporters. As far as the lawyer is concerned, we're going to talk to Ricky about that. One theory on this is, and again, I don't buy this, is the parents are trying to make the judge and the jury feel more sympathetic to Ethan that he is a court-appointed attorney as opposed to a real attorney. I would say if my son is, God forbid, up on murder charges, I would try to get them the best lawyer that's possible. What's interesting also today, it came out that the attorney for the son has no cooperation with the parent's attorney. They're not cooperating. There's no sharing of any information. That's pretty rare. Now, one thing that it does lead to the following theory is that Ethan's going to blame his parents for the shooting, for the upbringing, potentially abuse, a whole variety of things.
Honestly?
Yeah.
He should.
Well,
the fact that this kid did not feel listened to, he didn't feel loved or listened to. Like, you don't just, like, he obviously had mental health issues, and his parents did not address it. Like, they were not there for him, which is why this kid did what he did.
Yeah, I mean, he's very, very deeply afflicted.
Troubled.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's committed murder.
Right, but the fact that the parents went to the school, saw that this was happening, and didn't take him home.
Yeah.
Let him go back to school. Didn't check the bag. I mean.
So it's going to be very interesting to watch these two cases happen in parallel. By the way, the parents say the gun was locked, and somehow he was able to get to the gun. That's all separate, by the way, from another case, which is the $100 million lawsuit by the parents of students injured in the shooting, suing the school district for $100 million. There was a claim, by the way, over the weekend that the school is destroying evidence. The school is disputing that accusation, saying it's a lie. It's actually disgusting is the word that they used. The school is like, we have handed over all evidence to the prosecution. I can't believe you're accusing us of this. So there's 3 cases to be watching: the lawsuit against the school, the murder trial by Ethan's trial, and the trial of the parents, as we watch this case progress. What else do we have there?
Kate said they bought the kid a gun for Christmas, but they didn't pay for an attorney for their kid.
Yeah. Not really parents of the year. I like this snowman mug out.
Yeah, I thought it was very festive.
It's very festive. It's very, very seasonal. He has a bird. Why does he have a bird? Why is there a bird?
I don't know, but I probably...
It's like a canary.
Do you know, I've never noticed that.
I haven't noticed it until now.
I've been drinking out of that mug for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
Longer.
All right, so that's the situation in Michigan. The next thing I just wanted to address is the Maxwell trial, which again, we'll talk about it with Ricky Kleeman on the Patreon Tuesday, 3 p.m. Register via the link in my bio if you haven't already. What we know about this: the defense thought they were going to go 3 or 4 weeks. They went 2 weeks with their mainly 4 abuse victims, along with some corroborating witnesses. The prosecution went for 2 weeks. Ghislaine's defense team will begin their case on Thursday. They have 35 witnesses listed. That's more than the prosecution had. They're probably most definitely not going to call all of them. In fact, they told the judge they're going to go about 4 or 5 days. Big question mark, will Ghislaine testify herself? Unlikely. You typically don't, though we have seen this trend in recent cases where the defendants are testifying. Rittenhouse testified. Elizabeth Holmes testified. The McMichael, the shooter of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, he testified. Obviously mixed record there. But it'll be interesting if Maxwell decides that it's best for her. One interesting thing that came out in the as the defense kind of starts to present who they might put forth for their case is they want the ability to also put anonymous people on the stand. You know how like several of the abuse victims went by anonymized names, Jane, etc. They they're like, well, we want to have anonymous witnesses too. And the judge is like, well, for what reason? And they're like, why does it matter? We want to be able to do it too. Because they want to be able to show the jury there's nothing weird about anonymous witnesses. So like, you might think it's really bad that, these people are so traumatized because they want to be anonymous. Well, we have anonymous people too. So that might be part of their strategy. But by the way, these folks seem to have their act together. Their cross-examinations of the abusers were pretty strong. It'll really be interesting to see kind of how the jury ends up,
Comey's daughter is one of them?
So Comey's daughter is one of the 3 members of the prosecution. Though, people are like, they want to claim it's conspiracy theory because of Comey's daughter. And I'm like, well, Comey's like hated by Democrats and Republicans. I don't know if there's some sort of agenda for one party or another there, guys.
Rach says, she says, why does the defense have more witnesses than the prosecution when we know there are tons of people that can testify against her?
So the way it works in most trials is you make a list of potential witnesses for the other side. You typically don't call all of them. So actually the prosecution had many witnesses, a number of whom they didn't call. And in this case, the defense is just like, by the way, we could call any of the following 35 people. You do it, the other side can prepare for them, etc. No such thing as like a surprise witness. There has to be some sort of level of disclosure there. We can talk about that more with Ricky. So I think they're not going to end up calling more than the prosecution. They just have a list in case, because like something could happen in testimony where they want to have the option of like, oh, let's call witness 17, like they can corroborate that, or like something surprise happened. So they want to be able to basically, it's kind of like a sports team. You have a bunch of players available to you. You may use them as part of the trial or game or not.
What was it?
Yeah, Trent Bailey's saying, I'm already seeing the Comey conspiracy that they're trying to blow the case. So what is Comey's, the thing I think about with these conspiracy theories is like, okay, so what are you alleging? Like, what is her purpose in blowing the case? Her father's no longer the FBI director. She's in her career. She wants to move up in her career. You move up in the government in your career if you win cases, not if you lose high-profile cases. So what's the theory here, guys? Anyway. Because most of the conspiracy theories are always like a fact, and you're like, isn't that interesting? And you're like, well, explain what that means. Like, I don't know, but that's weird. Isn't that weird? I'm like, yes, that's weird.
Rach said, interesting. So weird they didn't call all of the people they could have. This whole trial isn't going the way I had hoped so far.
You should tune in tomorrow, and we'll talk to Ricky, who's very experienced in these things, to explain kind of what she makes of these decisions so far.
Do you want to talk about Turkey Wench asked to bring up Jussie Smollett?
Jussie.
Any thoughts there?
Jussie. Do I have any thoughts about Jussie Smollett? This is my thought about Jussie Smollett. Who goes when it's negative 40 in Chicago at 2 a.m. on a winter night on Lower Wacker Drive to get a tuna sandwich at a Subway?
It's not even tuna, we found out.
Oh, what is it?
Tuna sandwiches at Subway don't have any tuna in them.
Oh, correct. Added fact. Who goes at 2 a.m., negative 40, Chicago, Lower Wacker Drive, 2 a.m. to get a non-tuna tuna sandwich at Subway? I think that, it was interesting. He took the stand, tried to make his case too. Speaking of another person who defendant took the stand. The jury came back pretty quickly and was like, no, dude, you definitely set up this attack on yourself. It'll be interesting to see what sentencing he gets from the judge, because ultimately the judge actually could throw him in jail for a couple years. He has no previous offenses.
The fact that he's appealing.
He did tie up resources, the Chicago PD.
$100K and money.
Money and time. And by the way, while a Chicago police officer was investigating his, BS claims, that might have been minutes from preventing another crime or dealing with something else that was more important. And that's the concern, is don't tie up resources. And by the way, there's legitimate hate crimes in this country. So to you're creating an issue for anyone who actually experiences a real hate crime in this country. Being like, oh, well, the Smollett thing turned out to be not real, so maybe that racist crime or maybe that anti-gay crime wasn't real. And so you're doing a disservice to everybody, and frankly, every minority in this country who suffers from these sorts of things, whether you're Asian or black or gay or Jewish or Arab or whoever you are. So anyway, that was that was frustrating, but it seemed like
Happy Travel said, I truly have no tolerance for this case.
No.
That is true.
And by the way, some people are saying, what's with all the trials right now? One of the reasons you're seeing a lot of trials is because COVID delayed a lot of trials. So that's why it feels like, well, what's with all the trials right now? It's like, well, we didn't have trials for a while because of COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so it's me, Dawn, said, I think what a lot of people are thinking. After discussing these trials, can we discuss Cuomo versus CNN? Interested in what's going on there. And then also, on that note, I'd like to, if possible, discuss Chris Wallace moving over to CNN streaming and how they are poaching tons of producers and starting to build a huge streaming network over there.
Yeah. So, media news. But first, can I just react to Magic Mike?
Of course you can.
I do agree that Shaggy did put on more resources because he's a celebrity and got attention. But at the same time, if even if he was a regular person, they would have put a couple cops on the beat, and when it turns out to not be a legitimate claim, those are still diverted resources, right? But I hear you. All right, so media news. We have Chris Cuomo, Chris Wallace, completely unrelated headlines. Unrelated. They just both happen to be working as TV news anchors. Yes. Well, one no longer has a job. I don't know if anybody caught the brief SNL sketch with Andrew and Chris Cuomo, who are both like, we both lost our jobs because of COVID, and Kate McKinnon plays Fauci. She's like, no, that's actually not the reason. And
so that was Kate McKinnon's first time back all season. She was out, I think, filming a couple movies or whatever she was doing. So it's nice to see her back.
Yeah, she's one of the stars over there. So a couple headlines. So the Cuomo thing, he appears to be suing CNN and trying to get couple $1 million that he believes he's owed for his last couple years of his deal back from them. So we're waiting on that. The other headline was that a producer worked for Chris Cuomo. Alex, I don't know if you were following this. Was arrested for inducing minors into sex. He apparently worked in multiple networks. I don't know who this guy is. I never worked with him. But he was a producer for Cuomo, and apparently was engaged in crimes, sexual crimes against children.
Cuomo was?
Not Cuomo. One of his producers.
Were. So that just came out.
Yeah, that came out last couple of days, and so he just got arrested. So there's that. That's one thing. Then we have, as some of you are noting, Brian Williams' departure from MSNBC. After almost 30 years there. Remember, he came up through the ranks. He started as a local CBS anchor, went over to NBC, became the heir apparent to Brokaw, took over for Brokaw, dealt with his scandal, where he sort of majorly fibbed about being in a helicopter in Iraq and being shot down, which actually didn't happen. There is Alex and I always recommend this Malcolm Gladwell podcast episode, which goes into memory and doesn't necessarily absolve Brian completely, but does explain when it comes to memory why you might misremember things over time as you tell a story. It's a fascinating kind of take on how the brain functions.
And they did a study that he speaks about it during the podcast where people talk about where they were when they found out about 9/11.
Yeah.
And how so many people misremembered where they were.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and again, it doesn't completely absolve Brian, but like it does explain, like, if there are major events that you remember, talk to your friends or family about where they think they were at that time, because you might actually be like, oh, my memory has shifted too in regards to where I was when that major thing happened. So that's Brian Williams. There's rumors that he could be headed to CNN Plus, which is a new streaming service by CNN, which doesn't appear to just be a remake of CNN, at least not at this point. You know, some people are like, oh, another CNN. And they're like, well, CNN has the cable channel. CNN Plus is their streaming channel, and they're trying to get a whole bunch of original programming there and differentiate it. And by the way, the reason why you can't stream CNN is because they have cable contracts, so you need a cable password, and so they have to create another network, non-cable. So that's just a rumor. The person who is going there is Chris Wallace. So full disclosure, it's revisionist history, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And so Chris Wallace, former boss of mine, actually my first full-time job out of college was researcher for Chris Wallace for 3 years, nearly 3 years, producer for him on Fox News Sunday. He had just begun. He was probably a year and a half in when I started with him. He ended up spending 17 years there. And, Chris really, I have to say, incredible mentor, incredible boss, incredible journalist, incredible interviewer. Really just wanted to get at the facts, and he was commenting, we were listening to, based on some of your recommendations, to Chris on the Dax Shepard podcast, Al. And so if you have 2 hours handy, probably an hour and a half handy, but the first hour is really good too. Chris Wallace on the Dax Shepard podcast is excellent. And he laments, he's like, it used to be a time where it wasn't a compliment to be like, oh, you're a really fair journalist. It was like, you're a fair journalist is like, you're a firefighter who puts out fires. And he's like, now there's not many of us, and that's really frustrating. And I think he's been at Fox as Fox has evolved. As I like to tell folks, the Fox News of today is not the Fox News of 2016, is not the Fox News of 2008, is not the Fox News of 2000. There's been an evolution at Fox. Fox launched in 96, kind of figured out its deal during Monica as they would put on more Republicans and try to present things in what they, said at the time, and in many cases were true to, in a fair and balanced way. And so you get to 9/11, and they become kind of this, and Bush has become president, and now you see Fox kind of start to shift as this kind of pro-American network. The American flag was in the corner, and you see the shift that, with the Republican president in the White House, they started to give that White House more of a benefit of the doubt.
Highly recommend The Loudest Voice, right?
Loudest Voice with Roger Ailes, the movie. It was a miniseries on Showtime. It was very interesting. But you still had a pretty good separation at Fox. You had the primetime anchors who were mainly conservative, and daytime, which I worked on, Fox News Sunday, etc., did a pretty fair job, I would say, of covering the news. And I would say that was the case through probably 2008. And you start to see a shift during Obama. And so you have like phase 1, early Fox, pre 9/11. Phase 2, post 9/11, Bush Fox. Then you get to 2008 Fox, 2009 Fox, Obama Fox. And you start to see the seedlings of some of the, is Obama really an American type thing? And so that starts to evolve. And that continues. At the same time, though, you still have Fox anchors who will be critical of Republicans. And that, by the way, goes from 96 to basically 2017, where, even the commentary folks who were on at night, whether it's Megyn Kelly or Bill O'Reilly or whatever, would be like, okay, that was crazy, Republicans, get your act together type thing. It's really post-2017 where you see this kind of iteration 4 of Fox, where it's just whatever, the administration, in this case Trump, says goes for the most part. And by the way, at the same time, you saw MSNBC go through its own evolution, where it began as kind of straight news thing, then found this liberal prime time, and then that started to seep in, etc. And I'm not gonna say it's totally equal in both cases, but in the same vein, you now have a situation where if you tune in today, it's two different complete realities being presented by the cable networks, and in some cases, you're not getting the actual truth somewhere.
Well, Magic Mike said now most of these channels are opinion commentators, not news.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, like Fox will tell you that they're entertainers. Like Tucker Carlson fought on a lawsuit. He's like, why should anyone believe what I have to say? I'm an entertainer. And like that's his defense in one of the lawsuits that came up. So it is a loss for Fox. I think, Chris is a good guy. He's going over to CNN Plus to do like a daily interview show where he can do stuff beyond politics. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like. It hasn't quite launched yet, so we'll see. We'll see what the CNN Plus mix is and how that differentiates itself from CNN.
They said like cable. Second quarter, beginning next year. They're supposed to launch, but they're bringing on big names like Casey Hunt from Msnbc, as well as we were reading that maybe Brian Williams will head over there as well.
We'll see who goes to CNN Plus.
But what's interesting about it is you, my friend, were the first person to create a streaming network for a news channel.
Well, there was ABC had done like an old school one for a while, but the first kind of 24-hour one is the 24-hour news channel we launched at CBS in 2014. CBSN probably was like the biggest and most notable of its time, and so streaming Roku. We're still learning what a Roku was back then.
So if you ever watched CBSN, it was Mosh's baby.
That was my baby. Now it's a toddler. No, it's more than a toddler. It's in first grade. 7 years old now.
So Jerlyn just said, I appreciate your reporting better than any major news feed.
Well, thank you. I try my best. We're small but mighty group here. Me and my wife.
It's really you. I just have.
How are we doing on the fire? Are we doing okay on the fire?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, listen, you've had better, but it's not as bad as it was before.
Billy Old Fart. By the way, when I say your name aloud, it just lends less credibility to what you're about to say. But I think you're saying a good thing, Billy Old Fart. So Billy Old Fart. I'm going to keep saying your name. Is asking, is Chris replacing Charlie Rose in the statesman chair? Sort of. That's something that actually I think, Al, you mentioned. You said that too.
Totally gonna be.
You're like, this is like the Charlie Rose show. Like, Chris is 74. He's going to do like these long form interviews. No one's really replaced Charlie in that chair since Charlie was sort of forced into retirement in 2017 due to the accusations. So I know Christian Amanpour has taken over officially his show on PBS, but we'll see if Chris kind of becomes that show.
I hope so, because I missed that show.
Yeah. All right, so that covers that. So wishing Chris the best. Send him an email today.
Chris Wallace, not Chris Cuomo.
Yes, Chris Wallace. I wish Chris Wallace the best.
Correct.
All right, then what else do we have topically, Al? We talked about legal stuff. Oh, El, let's just talk to Peloton.
Okay. Well, first, I feel like it's just been talked about so much.
But we should set it up. Can I set it up, or do you want to set it up?
Yeah, you can set it up, and I'll.
All right. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, or like saw the headlines, or like, what's that about? So the reboot series of Sex and the City, which is called "And Just Like That," playing off of the phrase that Sarah Jessica Parker used in the show, "And Just Like That," had a recent episode, and I don't want to mess it up for anybody, but basically. There's a beloved character that dies after a vigorous workout on a Peloton. And I'm going to leave it at that. Does that work?
I think you could say it, because if the people who wanted to watch it have watched it.
All right. We're going to give you 10 seconds to tune out if you don't want to know what happens. 5, 4, 3, 2,
Spoiler
1.
alert.
Spoiler alert. Al, who dies on the Peloton?
Mr. Big.
Yeah.
I just will say that I was a little disappointed. I was very, the first episode to me was very cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about Peloton, because that's actually the most important part of it all.
Yeah.
So he dies on Peloton. So the Sex and the City writers or creators asked Peloton to donate a bike. For
an episode. But Peloton didn't know.
Peloton didn't know what it was for.
What it was going to be used for.
Had no idea.
Yeah.
Gave them the bike. Mr. Big dies on this bike, okay? And their stock plummets.
More than already. I mean, so just context on the Peloton stock. Peloton last year was up 440% because of at-home bike sales. This year, it's down 75%, the stock. And it hit a 52-week low on Friday in the hours after the episode came out, down to $37.
Okay, so then he died. So then what Peloton does, which was very smart, is... So Ryan Reynolds has a production company.
Right, called Maximum Effort. He worked with Peloton and Chris Nuth, and then the Peloton instructor, her name is Gail King, and I'm not Gail King, her name is Jess King. Jess King,
Allegra. I think she has like a stage name, Allegra.
Uh-huh.
They, within 48 hours, shot a commercial saying that, in fact, Mr. Big is alive, and that Peloton is
really healthy for you.
And good for your heart.
Yeah.
So that was very smart, in my opinion, marketing.
Yeah. They really turned the storyline on its head, because you would presume that like a company might like file a lawsuit as defamation or like complain or whatever. And Peloton's like, actually, how do we spin this? How do we make some lemonade out of this whole thing? And so they went with a whole, really creative, quickly shot ad, which they touted on their Twitter feed today, being like, by the way, if we can make an ad like that in 48 hours, you can definitely ride on your Peloton today.
Yes. So, and typically things like that you would think would take, time, because you have to, with obviously like a production like that, like getting, how much did they pay Chris? Like, did he agree so fast? He must have agreed so fast. Like, I feel like more companies should have quicker turnaround like this on things. Like, it works. It's
something that I've worked with. So now, for those of you who don't know, I consult full time, and I do this Instagram thing and the news thing as a side thing. And so one of the things I consult for companies on is communication strategy and content strategy, and how to be kind of rapid response, especially when it comes to the news. Because having worked in news, how do I bring that experience producing news to like your company, being like, something just happened, like, what's our storyline and how do we do good? Because now many consumers want companies not only to provide them with a good product, but also do good for the world, right? And so, but a lot of companies tend to use, work with certain agencies that just take a while. It's like molasses to turn things around. And certain companies are pretty good. Like, you see, like, a lot of consumer brands around the Super Bowl have like a good Twitter feed where they do rapid response, etc.
Yes.
And are really creative. But for the most part, like, this was I think this will be studied by a bunch of like marketers and agencies. It's like how quickly Peloton was able to pull this off. And I know that I did get some DMs from some of you who are like, I didn't really like their ad. I'm like, well, regardless of whether you liked it or not, I think it was pretty innovative in terms of kind of how it took its approach. So
I agree. Yeah, people are saying, PB said the big problem for me was Carrie not calling 911. That was stressful. Totally. There was so much stress happen. Like, Miranda,
but how many episodes have you watched so far?
2. Miranda was cringeworthy. I mean, it was just a cringeworthy. It felt like the writers, like, they didn't bring any young writers in the room.
Yeah.
Like, it was so...
So you're not happy with the show right now?
No.
Are you going to keep watching it?
Yeah, but, like, I'm not happy with it. Like, it's fine. Like, it's fun. Like, I love, seeing Sarah Jessica Parker, what she wears. But, like, I think it just could have been... It could have been better executed. And the fact that the way that Mr. Big died,
one of the issues that we all have is, like, we have these nostalgic feelings for...
I say Mr. Big, it's big.
Big, just big.
Mr. Big is the band that we like the song.
Yeah, what's the Mr. Big song we like?
Hold on, little girl, show them what we've done to you. I'm not.
Hold on, little. Yeah, you're a little scratchy in your throat.
Yeah.
But we all have these like nostalgic shows, and this is one of the reasons why I think we're all happy that like Friends didn't have like a legitimate reunion season, right, where they all like come back and like. They're all parents now.
Yeah, thank you, Magic Mike.
To be with you. We love Mr. Big to be with you.
Yeah.
Hold on. Actually, this is one of the few songs I don't know any lyrics. Alex typically knows all the lyrics to all the songs.
I know the lyrics. I'm just not feeling well.
But I guess it's a good thing Seinfeld didn't actually do like a new season years later, or Friends didn't do it. Like, I know Mad About You came back with them as parents. What is it? Will and Grace came back for like a full season, at least as like a comeback thing. So it's always like it's nice to see them, but like
this is really by God's honest take. Sex and the City was Sex in the City because of Samantha.
Yeah.
When Samantha is not there, which she is not, because she decided she didn't want to come back, there is no sex. It's just the city. Cringeworthy city is what it is.
All right. You heard it here first, folks.
That is my one
It's just
tip.
and the city.
Correct.
And just like that, there's no longer sex. All right. Just a reminder, bottom of the screen, we're raising money for the American Red Cross. We're just about to hit $800 in fundraising for the American Red Cross. So if you haven't donated yet, we're donating to them as they continue their disaster relief efforts in the South. So if you are able to make a couple dollars available to the American Red Cross, be very grateful to you. So we talked about that, talked about this. I got a question on tough transition. Who's done the transition before? Back to the Ukrainian-Russian border.
Oh, jeez.
The only thing I'll say there is there's 120,000 Russian troops there right now. There's big questions as to whether the Russians may invade or won't invade. By the way, there's some 100 Florida National Guard troops there. But they're in the far western part of the Ukraine, not on the border there. So you can feel a little bit at peace in regards to the American soldiers who are there in the Ukraine right now. But we have this sort of permanently militarized situation, which means if you have 120,000 Russian troops on the border, it could take one thing to, lead to some sort of major invasion. So that's that situation. So we're sort of status quo, unfortunate status quo right now, post kind of Biden-Putin phone calls. So it remains to be seen kind of what happens there, what sort of compromise they're able to strike, what sort of concession, unfortunately, the Ukraine's going to have to make to the Russians in order to somehow ensure that there's no proper invasion, because it doesn't look like the U.S. and Europe is going to come and bring our full air force and military at their disposal to defend Ukrainian territory. It's just not in U.S. interest right now to engage in a land war in Russia, which is sort of like what our biggest fear was in the Cold War for 50 years. The log fell and that was nice.
That was nice.
The natural
We
fire,
needed
the
that.
natural progression of the fire. So that's what I got there. We've crossed the $800 for American Red Cross. Thanks everybody for that. That's what I got as far as topics are right now, Al. So
I just wanted to say one thing, that apparently Christmas tree prices
yes,
just like everything. I mean, we went to go for dinner tonight at a place that used to be very, very affordable, and it's $25 for a cheeseburger.
yeah.
It's insane. It's insane. So everything is really, the prices of so many things. have
Inflation
increased.
is
So with
real.
Christmas trees, it takes 10 years for a Christmas tree to grow, and majority of Christmas trees, I think, are out of, what did you say, Oregon
and Washington?
State.
All of them, yeah.
But because of the wildfires and a lot of that, there have been less, I think, this year. So that's why prices have really increased. I mean, it's just crazy. Do you think that the Fed is they're meeting this week, right? What's going to happen?
The Fed. Oh, just making sure we didn't get a log
we're okay.
at the thing. The Fed is going to indicate this week whether they're going to raise interest rates sooner rather than later, and I think it'll probably be sooner. The other thing to be watching for as far as inflation is concerned is Build Back Better, not looking great right now, guys. The $2 trillion plan, because Joe Manchin says, I don't want to put that much more money in the economy because I'm worried about inflation. And so those are among the things that I think we're watching there. Personal note, I've gotten a bunch of applications tonight, Al.
Wow.
So it's real. We're launching the daily newsletter in early 2022. Well, I'm looking for a full-time writer and editor to work with me to write a newsletter, to kind of take this Instagram feed and turn it into a daily newsletter. I will put out some votes for all of you as far as name, time of day, all that stuff. I know there's a lot of morning newsletters, but do you actually want to read an evening newsletter, or do you just want it in the morning? Oh, some hearts for the evening newsletter. All right, how many hearts do we have for morning newsletter? Go.
Well, just everybody write morning or evening. Just write morning or evening.
This is a very unorganized way to do the poll.
No, that's
we'll do a
terrible.
proper
It's
poll.
Write morning or evening.
Right, morning or evening.
Okay, so people want you to discuss Succession.
Yeah, Succession. Okay, so I
Wait,
posted...
before you talk about Succession, Trump
Yeah.
Bailey keeps asking for you to say
What is
something about
this?
the Hawaii drinking water.
Oh, so there's a major situation we're watching in Hawaii as far as the drinking water, and it was close to a base over there there was petroleum in the drinking water, and the state health officials have warned residents of the military base near Pearl Harbor to avoid using the water. The Navy found petroleum in samples from its wells. This is a system, by the way, guys, that was used by tens of thousands of people, including daycare centers and schools. They detected gasoline and diesel-range hydrocarbons 350 times more than what the state determines is safe drinking water. It has a Flint-type situation written all over it. The Navy has shut down 2 of its wells, 3,000 families. Very concerning situation there at Pearl Harbor. And so something, I posted about it yesterday, I think, and we'll continue to monitor that situation. And that is something that we'll continue to monitor as we write this newsletter in early 2022. I've posted a job. I'm going to post a link to it. We're looking for a full-time editor-writer, particularly some of the newsletter experience would be great. Can kind of capture a conversational voice.
He's a pleasure to work with, folks.
Alex sarcastically saying,
I'm serious.
I'm a pleasure to work with.
I'm serious.
Majority of the time, yes?
Yeah, sometimes my graphics get a little wonky, but
if you have an eye for design, Alex would be incredibly grateful to you for existing. She hates my lack of design ability.
It's okay. You're good. You're good.
I'm all about the content and not the design.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're taking applications on that. And so if you know anybody or you are interested in working on turning this feed into a newsletter,
well,
join the party.
If Turkey Winch applied, it would be funny.
Turkey Winch. Well, we could have guest thoughts, or we could have screenshots of comments.
Yeah, I think we should include the Turkey Winch
from lives. So we'll see. So that's that on the newsletter front. So that's exciting news. A reminder again for those of you who weren't here earlier, we're doing live Zoom tomorrow, Tuesday, at 3 p.m. Eastern with Ricky Kleeman. I actually just emailed her, Al, the story about the Michigan son shooter not talking to his parents, and she goes, wow, that's fascinating. So even she, who's seen everything for 30 years, so we're going to talk a bit about that tomorrow as well, in addition to the Maxwell case, etc.
Unbelievable. You're getting a lot of people for evening and a lot of people for morning newsletters, by the way.
Oh, really? It's a split between an evening newsletter and morning newsletter?
Mornings with Mosh. She thinks there's some alliteration.
Oh, Chelsea Hoon says...
Yeah,
okay. Mrs. Turkey Winch?
Yeah.
Mrs. Winch? Yes.
Yeah. Well, wait, are they in the same room watching together?
I don't know. I'd like you guys to take a photo at some point, since you're both DMing during the live. How do you guys do the dynamic? Who keeps the volume up? Because you don't want the interference there. So, evening. Everyone. So it's interesting. By the way, evening newsletter. How early would you want it? Does it need to be out at 6 p.m.? Does it need to be out at 9 p.m.? Does it need to be out at is there a certain time where it
You'll
becomes
ask these
less
questions
relevant?
on your feed to get a real clear percentage.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna put some polling in there.
Turkey Wench says they're a power couple. I agree.
We have some names. We have Mo News. We have In the Mo. We have the Mo You Know. We have what else do we have? As far as
I don't know. You have a list on your phone.
We have a long list. Wanu News.
That's. I love the Wanu News. It's just I think it's going to be hard for people to search.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know how to say it.
It's difficult. Somebody was asking the live tomorrow is at 3 p.m. Eastern, but I will send out the full interview afterwards and put highlights up on Instagram. The full interview, though, will only go to Patreon folks.
The Mo You Know says it's me, Dawn.
The Mo You Know.
The Mo You Mo.
The more you mow? Okay, that works.
The Mo, oh my God. The Mo You Know. Oh my God, so good.
Mo News, Mo Knowledge. That's a Biggie Smalls thing. I love this. We should just keep this feed on for a while as people suggest.
Oh,
the Mo You Know is getting some names.
Mo Knows News. Whoa, that's a tongue twister.
Mo Knows News is a play off of the early 90s ads with Bo Jackson, where Bo Jackson, who played both football and baseball, said Bo knows baseball, Bo knows football. I don't know, Al, if you remember those ads. That might be our age difference.
I'm going to tell you something.
Yes.
I probably wasn't even born yet.
No, you were born.
Yeah?
But you were
Was I still in diapers?
You were in preschool.
In preschool.
Yeah.
Okay, Succession.
Oh, Succession. So I posted earlier an interview with the actor who plays Wamsgans. Wamsgans. What a name. Tom Wamsgans, talking about the finale. Again, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the finale. But I will say that this season of Succession was remarkable. I was telling you last night, it feels like a AP literature class in high school, where like you got to study like each episode for like certain words or scenes as like an homage to something or a preview of something you're going to see. So really incredibly written by Jesse Armstrong and the team at Succession. But that the whole twist. And by the way, what's interesting is if you look at the promotional photo for Succession this season, if you look at the lineup of where people are standing, they basically gave away the ending.
Do you have it in your phone that you can bring it up? Nah, it's weird. Don't worry.
I might. It might take a second.
Yeah, it's fine.
Anyway, it shows basically Logan, Tom, and Greg on one side, and then all the kids on the other side. That's sort of how it ends up at the end of the season. So you're like, oh my god, like if I just thought more of that photo of where the people were lined up. Anyway, I thought that was interesting.
It reminds me a little bit of like Breaking Bad in a way, in that like it's a really good show, but you always feel a little shitty watching it because it's inherently shitty. The characters are shitty.
Yeah.
Like you just feel a sense of, it's called transference.
Yeah.
When you feel the characters, like, and I definitely feel that way when I watch TV shows. If it's a happy-go-lucky TV show, I feel happy.
Yeah.
If it's like, at the end, I'm like, oh. So
well,
every time I watch it, I feel
you sort of end up like hating all these characters,
all
right?
of
Like,
them,
and you're like, who? But then like what Jeremy Strong's portrayal of Kendall, who, by the way, if you haven't read this long interview he did last week, is just so fascinating because the actor is basically Kendall Roy. He's like so serious, but I was gonna say that all these people end up being like such terrible people, but in any given episode, you feel sympathy for Shiv, you feel sympathy for Roman, you feel sympathy for Kendall, Connor, the sad guy that Max Ruck plays, who you might recall Max Ruck from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And so all of the characters are phenomenal, and then sometimes you're like rooting for Logan against his like shitty children, even though like he's a terrible father, but like you kind of root him on when he tells his kids this episode, like, make your own money. Like they're like, well, what are we gonna do? And they're like, he's like, I made my money, like you go do something with your lives. So anyway, but it's just like the arc of the narrative and the like Wamsgans like alluding to this character in Roman history, Emperor Nero, and what he ended up doing to Greg. And there's an interesting interview, the thing I posted with the actor who plays Wamsgans, and his name escapes me, Matt, whatever his name is, says like the healthiest relationship Tom has is with Greg. It's like it's much more normal than the relationship with his wife.
So true. Trent says the parallels to the Murdoch family are incredible.
Yeah, it's like a mix of like the Murdoch and the Redstone, Senator Redstone and Shari Redstone a little bit, but like the Murdochs, because you have multiple kids. You have Elizabeth, you have James, you have Lachlan, etc. So.
Oh, Magic Mike said, I've been hearing, this is something I really want to watch. Apparently it's amazing. Yeah. Magic Mike says, The Sex Lives of College Girls.
We'll take a look.
He
says Mindy Kaling wrote it.
Yeah.
You're a Mindy Kaling fan. Matt McFadden, that's who plays Wamsgans. Just interesting. Just great show. Great show. We'll have to get you to watch it.
To watch it.
Well, no, I want to rewatch it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, they also used your favorite expression in this past episode.
Yeah.
Which is?
I don't know if it's my favorite.
What are your favorite expressions?
Well, I like to say because it makes you laugh.
You like to say cool beans.
Well, it makes you laugh.
I know. Sometimes she says cool beans.
Once in a blue moon.
And once in a blue moon, she says cool beans. And in this episode, there's a whole interaction about the expression cool beans.
You got really excited about that.
I did.
He played Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. Says it's me, Dawn.
All right. I did not see Pride and Prejudice. Though I feel like I had to read a bit of it in high school at some point. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Really briefly, someone just wanted to ask about I Love Lucy.
Oh, yes. We saw the movie over the weekend. Al, quick review.
I thought it was excellent. I think Aaron Sorkin, it's so funny, like, if you watch an Aaron Sorkin a movie or TV show, it's like, that it's him. that wrote it. Like it's so
the staccato pacing. The people are constantly moving.
Dialogue. So it's very Aaron Sorkin-esque. But I was pleasantly surprised. I thought Nicole Kidman did an excellent job.
Nicole is Lucy. Who would have thunk it?
She
so
is
good.
so talented. I really hope she wins awards for this.
Yeah.
I also thought, was it
Javier Bardem as Desi
was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild to me that that you couldn't say you were pregnant or show any form of like marital affairs on TV.
Yeah.
During that time period, I mean, they had to.
Well,
fight.
remember, as husbands and wives had to have their beds apart on TV back then, including Lucy and Desi.
They had to fight to say that they were pregnant on air, just crazy, crazy.
And what's interesting is I told you I want to go back and rewatch old episodes because you learn how much Lucy and Desi were involved in every shot, every line. Asking well, why when Desi walks in is Lucy surprised by why? And it's it's a TV show sitcom. You didn't assume that they were that thoughtful about every single thing.
So right now it is going to be on Amazon streaming
in a couple weeks
on the 21st of December. Right now it's in the theaters until then. We wanted to see it. We didn't want to wait, so we drove it out.
Yeah, and we kind of wanted to see a movie in the theater again.
And support the movie.
Yeah, we were at this small theater in Bennington, Vermont, this mom and pop theater. And so we want to support local theaters, which is, and
honestly,
nice.
if you're okay with it, go do it because the more people that support the theaters, the more that they'll stay open for us. I mean, because for example,
Spielberg's movie West Side Story.
So if Spielberg can't get butts in seats, because right now all they know for sure is that the big Marvel movies, those are
the ones that still get people.
I think Spider-Man's coming out in a couple weeks. If people don't see these movies, then I have a feeling
we're going to lose theaters.
I
mean, I also feel like Amazon and Netflix are going to just buy up a bunch of theaters across the country and have them. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, what have you. Netflix already bought a couple theaters, one in LA, one in New York, the Paris, I think Netflix owns or whatever.
Yeah.
By the way, we have not seen West Side Story yet, but I love West Side Story.
We want it. We are going to see it.
And
we've heard amazing reviews about it.
Yeah. So, hoping we can see that.
Erin says, do you think that streaming is killing the theaters?
I don't know if it's... I mean, I think there's some issues. One, when it comes to movies, you've seen this kind of resurgence of television going back 15, 20... once major actors wanted to appear on TV as opposed to movies, you knew that there was a shift there. You also then had this trend line going back to 2000, 2001 where more and more movies just turn out to be remakes and sequels. So there's a lack of creativity. I posted an analysis about this several months ago, and I want to go back to it so I can be more accurate in terms of kind of what happened there. But I think theaters were already having difficulty, because of the trend line of where movies were going. Then the streamers became a thing, and then you saw COVID, which was really a nail in the coffin, where movies started to be released on streaming directly, and this fear of the theaters ended as far as the movie studios were concerned. So I do hope, just for culturally speaking, I don't know, nostalgia, it's a fun experience to go to the theater, get some popcorn, sit in some seats.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. And by the way, if you go to the movies, especially where we were, there was nobody in the theater. Which is so sad. I mean, I don't know. I guess if you have underlying conditions and you're worried about COVID, and which we all should be, I understand. I understand that. But I definitely know for a fact if nobody goes to the movies, these theaters are going to close down.
Yeah. Anyway, at the same time, they got to keep putting out good movies if they want us to come out there too. So, all right, guys, it's been a pleasure. We've raised almost $900 for the American Red Cross. Thank you for your donations. We'll post that, and we'll keep up the effort. Keep notifying ways that people can help the folks across the South and the Midwest recover from what was the weekend disaster. We need to watch West Side Story in theaters.
Yes.
We need to watch, what's the show that was mentioned to us?
Sex Lives of College Girls.
Sex Lives of College Girls. That was recommended to us. And
Magic Mike also really likes the Janet Jackson documentary.
I know Magic Mike brings up the Janet Jackson documentary every time. We got to watch that for his sake. And that's what we got. So thank you guys. We'll be coming to you, God willing, next week from a slightly warmer location. I mean, this was warm because of the fire, but it's cold outside. Thanks you guys for joining me. And again, tomorrow, Patreon, Ricky Kleeman on all things trials. And if you know anyone who wants to write for the newsletter, edit the newsletter, work very closely with me and Al, and mainly with Al to like team up against me when you disagree with what my idea is.
I never disagree. Let's just say I never disagree with your ideas.
Yes.
All that concerns me sometimes is when you ask for my help with graphics and then you take whatever I give you
and don't execute it.
Yeah.
I execute poorly. Your graphic vision.
Sometimes.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Talk to you.